Hello there, it's Jan from JB Crafts. Thank you for joining me today. I have another project for you today in my Technique Tuesday series, and today we're going to have a look at colouring on some vellum. So this is actually using some of my alcohol markers, but we're actually going to stamp and emboss on a piece of vellum, and then we're going to add the colour just in areas that we want to pick it up. So this is the design that I've come up with today. I've got a little bit of something old, something new, because I've just treated myself to these beautiful domed sort of arch nesting dies, and I'll show you the products in a second. So I couldn't wait to get playing with those. Out of all the nesting dies that I own, and it's a fair few, I realised that I didn't have anything this shape, and it just makes a beautiful set of windows here. So these are the ones that I actually treat myself to. They are from Hunky Dory, their Moonstone range, which is their metalwork, and they are straight edge nesting dies, and they're called the arched window. So I hope that, let me just take those out of the packet so that they're not getting the glare there. So you can see we've got the example here at the front, and it gives you the largest and smallest, and then you've got I think it was 10 different size dies. So I've actually started off with the largest one here, which is the outside of my frame, and then I've worked from there and built up the card size to match it. So we'll come back to those in a second. I don't need those straight away. I'll bring those back in a second. The first thing that I'm actually going to do is pop a little bit of the card together in the background and let that be drying while we do some stamping. And then we'll do the stamping, the heat embossing and the colouring. And then I'm going to use that large die to cut out my vellum to go behind the frame here. Okay, so done a little insert again. And there is a bit of a story behind this one. I don't normally do a lot of decoration here in the middle, but I have got a piece put in the middle here purely because when I stamped it on the background, it was as wonky as ever. I'm not quite sure what I was doing. I think I may be looking through one eye, but I thought, oh, I don't want to waste a whole piece of cardstock. So all I've done is just stamped it again and put a piece across the middle, and then I've just added a couple of tiny little scraps of the silver and made a feature of it, really. So you don't have to waste things. Yes, I could have turned it over and done it again, but I'd already done the inking around the outside and everything. So yeah, this is how I came about rectifying it. So the wonky one's underneath, this one's on the top, and it echoes the sentiment here. Beautiful font on this. I'll show you where I've got all these from in a second. So we've got "Dear friend, happiest of birthdays to you." Really, really nice one. So if I bring in the card size, and as I say, I've done a little bit of preparation on this because I want to focus on this technique, and I don't want the videos to go on, you know, for a massive amount of time. So I've got an 8" by 5.5. It's not quite a regular size. It's almost A5 in size, but I'd actually worked towards the archway. I'd sort of done this bit as an embellishment first and then work my way back with the Matson layer. So that's how I arrived at the size, and I would make an envelope for this to fit in. So the card itself is 8 inches tall by 5.5 inches, and I've cut that from a piece of my gorgeous Centura pearl there, just with that lovely shimmer. This has got a hint of silver in it. I've cut it at 11 inches by 8, scored it down the centre and made myself a nice side fold card. And then I wanted to add in some purple. That was the colour that I'd chosen to work with for this one. So I've taken a piece of purple cardstock. If I put you this bit back in the middle, you can see here we've got that whole matte layer at the ready, and the full matte layer measured 7 5/8 inch tall by 5 1/8. So I've just come down 1/8 of an inch. It's just going to have a little border around the edge of this one. No, I haven't. I've come down 3/8 of an inch on this one. Telling you fibs. 3/8 of an inch. This is going to have about 1/4 of an inch-ish, just a bit more. But I'm waving this bit about because I've actually cut this out of the centre. I'm always talking about being frugal with your cardstock, so I've just taken one of my rectangles out of here. I've cut this out, which has given me a really nice finish on this panel, and this can be used on another card. I don't actually need it for this one, but what's the point in wasting it? It's beautiful double-sided pearlescent cardstock. So yeah, I've got that one sort of, I'll keep that one in the scrap bin ready to use on another design. This is going to go underneath the back of everything. It's not going to show. And then I've done the next 2 layers as well ready. So we've actually got a 7¼ by 4¾ piece of silver matte mirror card, and you can just see there's a very, very skinny tiny sort of 1/8 of an inch border around the outside. And then I chose some design paper again from an old paper pad. It's been quite rewarding to be able to get some of my older things out now and play with those, rather than it being strictly related to Crafters Companion. For those of you that haven't come across me before, I used to work for Crafters Companion, which are a huge paper crafting company here in the UK, but no longer. Parted ways with them earlier on in the year. Not my decision, but that's another story for another time. So yeah, I can actually dig out now. I had so much stash before I started working for them that it's been nice to actually delve back into that. So this is from an old paper pad, and I just wanted, I'm in a bit of a stripy mood at the minute. I like the stripes, and we've gone horizontal, and I've just matted that layer, which was 7⅛ by 4�5, and I've just stuck that one down ready on the top of here. Added a little bit of foam tape, which we can actually secure now onto that other matte layer, and then I can pop that card blank to one side and we can focus on the stamping itself. So again, if we just remove the release paper from my double-sided tape, and this is from Sticks 2, I found that it's a really nice one, and I haven't had any trouble getting the release paper off. If any of you followed me for a while, especially when I was with Crafters Companion, I used to have a love-hate relationship with double-sided elements, particularly the foam pads. But yeah, we seem to be getting better at it. So I'm going to centre this one in that lilac panel here, just sort of tack it into place. And then I usually stand it up to make sure it looks reasonably straight, and if I'm happy, I can commit to sticking that down. So that's going to be my background. I've got 3 layers there. I've got the purple, the silver, and then the design paper there, and we'll pop that to one side while we work on some of the other elements. So I want to bring in next a piece of vellum. Okay, so I use, and I think I've mentioned this before on the channel, I use the Anita's plain white vellum pack. I get 10 sheets in here. It's very affordable. I buy it straight from the internet. I think they sell it at Craft Stash as well. I think I've had it from them guys before. But yeah, I use this for pretty much everything. So if those of you that have been with me a while have seen where I use the watercolour pens, the alcohol pens on vellum, it was the same stuff. It's a nice weight, and we're going to actually do some stamping on here and some embossing. So just in order to get all my ducks in a row, I'm going to bring in my little anti-static bag with my talc. Well, it's like a talc in there. It's just to get rid of any kind of static that may be on the surface of the vellum. I've got my Versamark ink pad, which is a clear. It's not the best. It is a little bit grubby. It's well loved, but it does the job. And it's just a sticky ink, and that sticky ink is going to attract my white embossing powder, and I keep mine just in a little pot here. We'll take the top off ready, and I've got a little plastic spoon that I just spoon it out and over the design with. So we'll pop that to one side for a second. Try not to knock it over everywhere. I've also got my heat tool at the ready, because we're going to need to melt the embossing powder, and we should be good to go. So I need the stamping platform, and we need a stamp to sort of work with. So any stamp, again, you can use anything for this. It doesn't have to be the same as what I've got. And mine is a really, really old one. Now I'm just going to pop this sort of in the centre here, because I'm going to stamp off this edge. I may need to move it across actually. We'll do the first one in situ here. I like to have it anchored in the corner, because if I need to re-stamp, I know if anything's moved, I can just push it back into the corner. So I think for the first one, we will actually keep it as is. So the first thing I need to do is pop my anti-static powder on here. And as I say, it's like a talc. If you don't have one of these, you can actually use talc, or you can use corn flour or cornstarch, pretty much the same product, just a different name. And I'm going to treat the whole thing to this. And all it does is remove any finger marks where I've handled it, where I've cut it, the paper, and you know, sort of brought it into play. And it also removes any static, because the embossing powder will stick to pretty much anything, you know, and you don't want it all over. You just want it to stick to the bits that we're going to emboss. Now my stamp set is an old Stampin' Up set here. I used to have a friend that worked for Stamping Up and bought a fair few products from her. It's a really, really old one. I very much doubt that it's made any longer. It's called Birthday Blooms, but I just love this particular floral element here. And this is where I've got my sentiment: dear friend, happiest of birthdays. And I'm going to use this tiny little cluster of dots as well, just to fill in some of the gaps. So we're going to take that large one off. These are red rubber stamps. So the first thing I did was make sure I changed the door over on my stamp platform. So I've got rubber on this side. I more often than not work this way because I use the clear acrylic or the photopolymer stamps. So yeah, I had to turn it over. We'll get that in place ready. And I want to stamp this sort of towards that bottom section, but I am just going to grab my dies, and the inside of my frame was 1, 2, 3 dies in. And all I want to do is use this as a positioner, because this is going to be the inside of the frame here. So I want to make sure that there's not too much of this disappeared out of the bottom of the frame. I want to be able to see the majority of it when we actually cut the vellum out, so it can move up a little bit. And we're going to cut sort of around about there-ish. Doesn't matter if it's not perfect. Put that to one side for a second, and then we're going to pick up the stamp on here. And again, just make sure that this is pushed right into the corner. Okay, don't touch it, Jan. You've just defeated the objective of popping the anti-static powder on. And then we're going to take our Versamark ink, and I'm going to ink up my stamp. Now I've just re-inked my Versamark, so it should be nice and juicy today. You can see it all on the stamp. It's got a nice sheen now on the stamp. And then we're going to pop this straight down onto the vellum, and I'm just going to bring my pressure tool in to apply a nice even pressure to the top of that platform lid there. And then I'm going to heat emboss this one before I do the next one. All right, I like to see where I've sort of done the inking and the work before I do the next one. We're going to stamp again, but just before I do that, I'm going to bring in my embossing powder. I'm just going to handle this up at the top here and try not to get my fingers all over it. And you can, I don't know whether it's picking it up on the camera, I can just see the shimmer from that nice sticky ink on here now. So all I'm going to do is pop this over my little tub here. I'm going to pop embossing powder all over where I can see that sticky ink and the design of the stamp. Let it sit for a second on top of the ink so that it catches it. And I don't think you can ever put too much powder on at this point, because we're going to shake off all the excess. So I'm just going to make sure that it's all covered, and then I'm going to pop it back in here, give it a little tap, make sure there's no excess, and you can just see there we've got that beautiful clear image ready to heat emboss. So top tip, move the powder out of the way so that you're not going to heat what's in the pot. And I'm going to put my heat tool on and bring this up to temperature. The vellum obviously is very thin, so the less time that the heat's on it, the better. The longer the heat's on it, the more chance there is of it warping. So I want to make sure it's up to temperature. I bring my little hot hands in now and hold it close to the image, and then literally just focus on one section, and this will go from that opaque white into a nice shiny glossy finish. Just chase it round, make sure that we've got all the different elements there. I can see where it's melting, and once it's melted you can move off to the next bit. And it does tend to warp it a little bit, but we can again manipulate this back into position. So you can see now we've got that lovely bright white sort of glossy finish on there. And then I want to add a bit more so that my design is running all the way down that left hand side of the archway. So we're going to have this in the bottom here, and I want a bit more up in this section. So I'm going to move the whole thing across because we're going to stamp off the edge, and that's why I tend to keep a piece of paper in the back of my stamp platform. So I'm just going to line this up down here now. Make sure that that area that I'm going to work in is still static and fingerprint free. I'm going to use this as a guide. I'm going to give my stamp a little bit of a wipe so that I'm not transferring any unnecessary ink. And then we're going to reposition this and stamp off the edge of the vellum. So I'm going to use this as a guide here. I want this to be about here. I can set that on the magnet so that it's going to stay in place. And then I want this one to come in from the top here, but not overlap what I've already done. So about there looks good to me. Okay, we'll let you go. I'm going to put these up here. We're going to pick up that stamp again. And I'm going to do the same again. So I've got my Versamark, and I don't actually need to do the very far side of it. Let me just see if I can bring that over. This bit here is going to go off the edge, so I'm just starting sort of 2/3 of the way in. And then we're going to bring this onto the vellum. Apply the pressure again. Transfer that nice sticky ink. And then do that same procedure. Oops. There we go. So lift that up and we should have that nice kind of watermark effect again. You can just see it glistening. I can just see it underneath here. Yep. So we're going to treat that to some embossing powder as well. And stick that back over where I've just stamped. So again, plenty on. I always like to really coat it and let it sit for a second so that it can grab. Wherever you can see the sticky ink, a little bit of that on. And then we can pop the rest, the residue, back in the pot there. And again, you can see we've got that lovely image there. Now I do keep a little angled brush here just for this kind of purpose. I can see a little tiny bit of powder here that's strayed away from where it should be. So I use the brush just to take away any excess pieces and give it a tap again, and we should be good to go. So this time I'm actually going to put the lid back on. So we've done very well not getting it everywhere and not melting it. I can actually put that out of the way now. So again, I've got my little hot hands. We can actually move the whole stamp out of the way now because we've finished with that. And again, even though I've had the heat tool on, I'm going to pop it on for a second and keep it going until it gets up to temperature. And then we're going to do the same again. I'm just going to apply it up at the top here until that powder starts melting. It goes really quickly on the vellum. And once it's changed, chase it round the design there, and once it's gone nice and bright white and glossy, we can actually move away from the image. And again, we can manipulate that back into shape before it dries totally, and you can see we've got that beautiful image there. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the arch. I'm going to use the larger one actually now because we want to cut out. I'm going to do the second one in, which is slightly smaller than my original arch, but bigger than the inside one. And we're going to cut a section of this out. But before I cut it out, I'm going to apply a little bit of colour to it. So bring in a piece of scrap card, and then I've chosen again some of my alcohol markers here. The alcohol works beautifully on the back of the vellum. So I've got 2 shades of green. I've got dull green blend and a light green blend, and then I've got the hydrangea blend, which was the purple that matched my background the best here. So I scribbled them out and looked at which one matched it the best, and in my opinion that's the one that we went for. So main tip I can give you for this, you can colour on the front, but the alcohol will stain your embossing, so flip it over. Okay, turn it over and work on the back. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with the mid-tone here. I'm not going to do much in the line of shading. Okay, so this is actually my hydrangea blend. And wherever I've got the flower work here, I'm just going to use that tip of the brush and flood that section. Okay, so wherever there's elements of the petals, That's why I like the brush markers for this, because you can lay them sort of on. If you notice, I'm not upright with it. I've got it laid on its side, and you can cover quite a large area. And you don't have to be too precious about this. You know, when I'm doing my alcohol colouring, I tend to spend a long time working on, you know, where's the light, which is the shading part, and I don't need to with this. I just want some colour behind that detail. And I'll show you in a second. The vellum diffuses it beautifully. I've got some little buds up here as well. We're going to do the same. So I've just kept two colours. I've got two shades of green, but I've just got the two colours, the lilac and the green. And then when we turn it over, you can see how that colour shows through, and it just looks beautiful. It really does. So again, on here, and then I'm going to do the same on the one at the bottom. So we've got that larger flower on here. And if you're not sure on your image which bits are which and which bits should be coloured, then I tend to refer back, you know, have a look at what you've got on here. You can see clearly, you know, where the flower buds are, where the main flower is, and you're good to go with it. So again, I'm just going to do the same again. I'm using that brush nib pretty much laid on its side just for speed, but it is handy if you've got any little areas that you can go in with that point. Now, I'm not worried about going over any of the embossing lines that are inside the shape. So I've stayed in the parameters of the outside line here. So the outside of the flower, I'm colouring to the inside of it here. But when I get to the rest of the flower, I can go right over the back of this now. And as I say, that's why that brush tip marker comes in handy, because you can do a large area very, very quickly. And then I tend to just go over it a couple of times so that it is well saturated with colour. And then you've got that beautiful, beautiful effect on there. So that's my lilac. I am going to use the dull green on the pointy leaves. So again, remembering to flip it back over. And we're going to go with the mid-tones again. Keep all the mid-tones. And wherever I've got those proper sort of pointy leaves, I'm just going to add a little bit of colour. Again, staying in the outside area, but flooding the inside. They're just those two, I think. Oh, there's a little bit there. As I say, if you're not sure which bit's which, you can always refer back to your stamp, and it'll highlight where these pieces need to be. And then I'm going to do the same at the bottom here. Okay. So when I actually pop the videos up, I tend not to edit them, you know, for the benefit of people that do want to see the process. But obviously, you know, you can fast forward through this element once you've seen what I'm actually doing. I tend to not put them on fast forward at the minute, because I have a lot of new viewers and new crafters. So again, you know, you want to see the whole thing, that's fine. If you want to skip through it, then you can actually fast forward through the videos to where the, you know, the point is that you want to restart watching again. So yeah, I'm just adding that green behind the leaves. It doesn't matter how messy it is, because when you see that diffused part through the other side, it doesn't matter how bad or how messy it looks on this side. And then I'm just going to bring in that lighter green here, and we're just going to do those little tiny sort of, they're almost different leaves here. So I've got these ones, little tiny bit inside. I tend to rest on the white because obviously you can see really well. If I did this on here, that's not bad on the grey, but I tend to pop the white behind it just so that I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. And then again on this bottom one. So I've got some at this side. I'm just going to pop a little bit in there. I don't want that to be quite as pronounced as the other leaves there. And that last bit at the bottom. And again, you don't have to be too neat with it. I've just scribbled it in the back there. And when we turn it over, you've got that beautiful, beautiful effect. It never sort of ceases to amaze me, this. And you can do this with anything. It doesn't have to be flowers. You know, you could go back to the butterflies. It could be a more masculine design. Absolutely any stamps that you've got, you can actually do this onto the vellum, do the embossing, and then just remember to turn it over and colour it on the back, on the reverse side. So what I'm going to do now then is I'm going to position my arches, and I'm just going to bring in the one that I've cut here. So this is going to be the master one. Now I actually used the first die here for the outside, and then die number 3 to give me that width of border. When I put this one in, this was number 2, it was going to be really skinny and I wanted a bit more substance to the border. So I've cut them 3 times. I've cut 2 in plain white, and then I've cut 1 in that lovely Centura pearl like we made the card blank from, so that I've got that little bit of shimmer and shine. And I've stuck all 3 together. You can just see there where we've got a little bit more depth, and it is quite a rigid piece. So then I'm going to take the second one, and that's going to nestle nicely. And this is the beauty of nesting dies, they just make everything so straightforward. And I'm going to cut my vellum with this one so that it will fit nicely around the back of that design. So the next thing we need to do is decide whereabouts we want to actually position, you know, which bits we want showing. And then I'm going to take my tape again and make sure that this is taped down nice and securely. So let's have a little look. We will go around about there, I think is fine. It doesn't have to be perfect, you know, you just decide how much of the images you want showing inside, bearing in mind that there's going to be a little bit more of it covered up when it goes with this one over the top, but I've got enough there showing for what I want to do. And then I'm going to bring my plates back in, the same plates again, and pop this through my Gemini. Okay, so I'm going to pop that on here, and then just excuse me a second while we actually pass this through the Gemini. And we should have our design, whoops, at the ready there. Okay, it's actually popped itself out there. I'll just get rid of the tape off here. A number of times I've ended up with a die in the bin because I've not taken it off the card. So that's going to be my piece that I'm going to work with, and then I'm going to stick that onto the back of here, so we've got our embellishment. Now when I did this the first time round, I thought I wanted it on white cardstock, and if I can just find, yeah, this is where I started out. I'll go through the process. I thought I wanted white behind it, so originally I'd cut a solid one out of plain white cardstock to put at the back here. And then I thought, oh, just to bring a little bit of detail in, I embossed that piece with an embossing folder, just a background swirly embossing folder. And my original plan was to have this as one sort of unit and have it all fastened together like so. That's where I was heading with it. Then when I brought the card back in, I thought, actually, there's not a lot of differentiation between the background now and the embossing. So when I actually moved this bit out, I like the fact that you can see those stripes. So it's just diffused it a little bit here, but you can see the stripes. They're not too distracting, and that white embossing stands out much more in my mind. So that's what we're going to go with. So all I need to do now then is pop this on the back. And to do that, I'm going to use my what I call my embellishment glue. A lot of you know that I sort of use the all-purpose for sticking cards and papers together, but anything that's an embellishment, or you know, something a bit different, so I've got the vellum here, I am literally just going to run a little ribbon of my acrylic glue here all the way around. Now, I had a lady, forgive me, I can't remember her name, but I had a lady on one of the videos the other day ask me which acrylic glue I use. And I'm not the best customer ever, because I shop around and I use whatever is cheapest. So I've got 2 or 3. I use the Collal, which is the tacky glue, which we used all the time when I was working at Crafter's Companion. I have High Tack, really sticky, and these are all PVA glues. They're a water-based PVA, and I also use the Cosmic Shimmer acrylic glue. So I tend to shop around, and when they're on offer I stock up on these, because obviously you can imagine I get through a fair bit of glue with all the demoing and everything. So they sit at the side of my desk ready to use. So all I'm going to do now then is lay that one flat on the desk. In fact, I'm going to invert that over here so that I can see where I'm working. And this is just that fraction smaller, so I can get this tacked down onto that frame on the reverse side of it, and that glue will do the job. I know that that's going to be sufficient to hold it in place. Make sure it's all nice and flat, and then I can give it some really good pressure from this side. And we've got our lovely little painted panel there. So the white embossing powder, that colour on the back, I just love the diffused effect. So if you take that into account, these colours can be a lot stronger than you actually think they will be, because you're going to get that lovely diffused finish. And this is going to sit on top of here now. And to do that, I'm going to bring in some red line tape to make sure that that's nice and secure. Now again, it was bugging me a little bit that I'd ended up with a card size that had got a gap here at the bottom. So I was like, right, what am I going to do with the gap? I want something across the bottom here. I tried some twine round it and that didn't look right. So I've actually made a further little bit of embellishment here. So if you look at this one, I've got a bit of lace popping out of the bottom. The lace looks really nice against the white embossing powder. It's white lace. And then I've just got a strip of that background purple to sort of link it all together, and I've tucked this underneath the back of the frame. So I've actually prepared that ready. As I say, I wanted to focus on the embossing side of it for the video. So I've taken a scrap of the purple, I've stuck the lace on the reverse side of it here, and then all I'm going to do is pop this underneath here. It's the same width, this measures 4 inches, and all I'm going to do is line this up so that I've got a tiny bit of the purple showing underneath. Doesn't need to be a lot, it's about, I'd say, less than 1/4, maybe 1/8 of an inch, and stick that on the back here. So I've made sure that it doesn't come up above the top of the frame. That purple piece is narrow enough that it's not going to show behind the frame. So we've now actually got something that's a little bit more proportionate to the front of the card here. And then I've put another piece just to secure it all on the back. So we'll take the liner off there. Oops, I've got that over the back of the lace, so it's it doesn't want to come off. I just need to lift, there we go, the red liner off. And then in order to stick it to the rest of the card, I'm also going to use my red line tape, and this will act as a barrier as well. Where I've just popped the vellum on the back, it's going to secure the whole thing because the tape's going over the top of the vellum and onto the edge of the card as well. So I'm going to put a couple of straight pieces down either side, and then I'm just going to cut. It doesn't necessarily need to be anchored all the way around. I'm just going to cut a shorter piece here now, and I'm going to pop that bit across the top here so that it's anchored at the top as well. Take the liners off all of those, and then we can position this on our card blank now. And then we've just got a little bit of decoration to do and we're good to go. So that technique for today then was using the vellum, again with your alcohol markers, but using them sort of a bit more purposeful than the video I did last time, which was just using them in general to make a background. And then I'm going to sort of eyeball this one to be roughly centered. So I'm looking down either side and trying to get that straight, and then I want around about the same distance at the top as what I've got below the lace, and then we can press that down. Okay, could feel something underneath there then, but it's my tape that's under the middle. I thought, what have I got stuck underneath it? And that should secure that nicely underneath here. So there's a little bit of movement because the lace is not secure all the way down. And then it was just a case of adding the greeting on there. So for the greeting, I have used the same die set, same stamp set, and I've stamped out the Dear Friend here. It's a gorgeous little font. And I've just used a couple of nesting dies to cut that out so that we've got a little bit of a featured element. And I'm going to pop this here over the edge of the frame. So what I've done is I've popped some tape under the side that's going to go on the vellum because this is lower down than the 3 layers of frame. So literally just pop some on that left hand side there, And we'll just take the backing off here. And then I'm going to add a little tiny bit of wet glue to the frame to secure that other side. Come on, the last bit's evading me. There we go. So yeah, I'm going to line up where I want that to go. Where's my tweezers gone? On here, like so. And then what I want to do is just pop a little bit of wet glue here so that it sticks onto the side as well. So the foam pads are going to drop into the gap, and then that bit is going to go just over the edge like so. And then I'm happy with that just there. Okay, so that's the bulk of it. Now I've just realised when I did my stamping, I did actually forget a little bit. I said I'd use this little tiny dotty bit here, which I did on the original one. You can see here I just filled in some of the gaps with the little dots, so I stamped those in that clear ink just the same and added the embossing pad. I've just realized I'd missed those off this section, so you know, you can do that with the ink. If not, what we could do is just be crafty and come in, if you've got a white gel pen handy, if you feel that it needs a little bit more detail, this will show up and dry on the vellum as well. So we could just add a little bit of extra detail in here with the white, just to link it all together. Again, you know, optional, you don't have to do this bit. I just realized when I was putting it together then that I'd forgotten that step. But you can just see we've got those extra pieces in there with the white. Just remember now not to touch that until it will dry on top of the vellum, but it will be wet for a second or two. And then, as always, you know me by now, in come the gems. And because I'd got that very thin silver matte layer and I'd chosen the silver here, I did think about putting purple on, and I thought, no, that's going to be too distracting. The depth of colour in a purple is going to detract from what's going on here. So I've just stuck with the silver, with the 5 again, to literally go through the image, through the sentiment, and that was my finished design. So you can see them both there, very, very similar. Pop that one to one side, and then we've got that lovely insert just linking it all together with the happiest of birthdays to you. So this could be any occasion, you know, this would fit any occasion really. The stamp can be anything you have. As I say, I had a look through mine. It's been nice to, as I said previously, to use some of my older stuff, and I absolutely love this. I think it's meant to be a peony, which is one of my favourite flowers. So yeah, really enjoyed it. So yeah, stamping and embossing on the vellum, colouring on the reverse of it with my alcohol markers. It all dries beautifully and you get that lovely diffused effect. Remember not to do the colouring on the top because the alcoholing will stain your embossing. Yeah, so yeah, you're better off with it on the reverse of it. So that's my technique for this week, for Technique Tuesday. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you'll give it a try. You can find me on Facebook at JB Crafts as well, if any of you want to share any of the projects. I know a lot of you had a go at some of the things that I put up on the channel, which I love seeing on the Facebook page. So yeah, JB Crafts if you use Facebook, and I will be back very shortly with another tutorial for you. But for now, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye for now.